So good morning. I'm Heather Grabbe. I'm director of the Open Society Foundations here in Brussels, where we do the relationship between the Open Society Foundations and the European Union. As you know, the Open Society Foundations have a very long history of commitment to advancing the integration of Roma in European societies, and we've worked closely with the institutions and with member state governments, as well as with members of the European Parliament, in order to advance that agenda. And I'm very happy to see here today many of the people who've shown great commitment personally as well as politically in working with us in this cause for many years. This event today, which is about national Roma strategies and ensuring a comprehensive European approach to Roma, is hosted under the patronage of the President Jerzy Buzek. Unfortunately, President Buzek is unable to join us today because he's on mission outside Brussels, and so we're delighted to have Isabelle Durand, Vice President of the Parliament, to replace him. We will also have a number of other distinguished speakers this morning, including Marianne Jean Marinescu, Vice President of the EPP Group here in the Parliament. We have, of course, also Françoise Lebaille, who's Director General of DG Justice. We have George Soros, who's the Chairman of the Open Society Foundations and himself very long committed to the Roma cause. We have Željko Jovanović, who's the Director of Roma Initiatives in Budapest, which is the grant-making and strategizing arm of the Roma work that Open Society Foundations do. And we hope we will have, quite shortly, Rebecca Harms, the Chair of the Greens EFA Group in the European Parliament, who's unfortunately been a little bit delayed. Now, we're meeting here today at a really critical moment for Roma integration in Europe. The Commission issued in the spring a big advance in terms of EU strategizing in the form of its EU framework document for national integration strategies. That document contained a lot of very valuable information and data, as well as advice and recommendations to member states, and a number of important proposals at the EU level. Now it needs to be implemented, particularly through national strategies by the member states, and they have been given the deadline of the end of this year to submit their national integration strategies. So those of you who are very quick at maths and have looked at the date will realize that we have only 7 weeks until the end of the year, and of course Christmas is in the way, so the deadline is really very soon. And that's why it's important to have this event today, to give some political momentum to the whole process, and also to send a signal to the member states. Many of you are actually working within the member states here in this room today, that there are high expectations both here in Brussels with the European institutions, particularly the Parliament and the Commission, but also among civil society and among Roma communities themselves. There are high expectations of ambitious and substantive national strategies that really tackle the major problems facing Roma today. Problems of integration to do with health, education, housing, employment, but also non-discrimination and ending Romophobia, as you might call it. Also the prejudice against Roma that we see, unfortunately, in many member states. Today is also a day to highlight the work of the Decade of Roma Inclusion, which is now more than halfway through. It started in 2005. And some progress has been made, but a great deal still needs to be made in order to fulfill the promises and the commitments made under the decade 6 years ago. It's also time to look at how the decade can be integrated more substantively and constructively into the work of the European Union, especially the Roma platform, which will meet again on the 17th of this month. So it's a good moment to take stock of what's been achieved through the decade, also the platform, how they can be integrated in a working, constructive manner, and how they can also work with the member states to advance the agenda at this point. I will now hand over to our first speaker, but let me just also thank the Parliament very much for its support, both in terms of the patronage of the President, hosting this event today, and the personal commitment shown by many members of the Parliament to this issue over time. So I'll hand over now to Isabelle Durand, who is the Vice President and representing President Buzek.